The handcuffs clicked shut, echoing louder than the announcement for a delayed flight to London. To the onlookers in JFK's Terminal 4, it looked like justice, a well-dressed thief caught red-handed with a designer bag that wasn't his. But the man standing calmly in the center of the chaos, Dr. Aris Freeman, wasn't looking at the security guards. He was looking at his watch. He knew something they didn't. He knew that in exactly 12 minutes, the glass doors of the terminal were going to slide open, and the ground beneath this airport was going to shake. They thought they had trapped a criminal, but they had just declared war on the wrong man. And when the karma hit, it wouldn't just be swift, it would be legendary. The air inside John F. Kennedy International Airport was thick with the scent of stale coffee floor wax, and the palpable anxiety of 5,000 travelers trying to get somewhere else. Dr. Aris Freeman adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke charcoal blazer. He was a man who lived his life by metrics and precision. As the chief of neurology at St. Jude's Research Hospital and the primary shareholder of Neuralink Dynamics, Aris dealt in fractions of millimeters. One slip in his line of work didn't mean a lost sale. It meant a lost life. Consequently, he had very little patience for inefficiency, and even less for drama. He had just stepped off a 10-hour flight from Zurich. It had been a grueling week of conferences negotiating the patent rights for a new nanobot delivery system for treating glioblastomas. He was exhausted. All he wanted was his luggage, his driver, and the silence of his apartment in Tribeca. Aris stood near Carousel 9, the dedicated belt for first class and priority passengers. He checked his phone. A text from his driver, Ben, read, "Curbside boss. Traffic is a nightmare, but I'm holding the spot." Aris typed a quick reply. "Bag coming now. 5 minutes." He looked up as the warning buzzer sounded and the heavy rubber slats parted. The carousel began to churn. Aris wasn't waiting for a generic black polyester suitcase. He was waiting for the ghost. It was a custom-commissioned piece from a heritage leatherworker in Italy, a weekender bag made of rare, silver-dyed Cordovan leather. It was distinctive, absurdly expensive, and the only one of its kind in existence. He had bought it to celebrate his first successful solo surgery 10 years ago. It traveled with him everywhere. Inside that bag were his tablet containing sensitive patient data, a change of clothes, and a prototype medical sensor, valued at roughly $200,000. The bag slid down the ramp, gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. Aris stepped forward, his movement fluid, and practiced. He gripped the handle, feeling the familiar grain of the leather. "Finally," he muttered to himself. He pulled the handle up, ready to wheel it toward the exit. He didn't notice the woman standing 10 feet away, her eyes scanning the belt with the intensity of a hawk hunting a field mouse. He didn't notice how her gaze snapped toward him, or rather toward the silver bag in his hand. He didn't notice until the shriek cut through the ambient noise of the terminal like a jagged piece of glass. "Hey, you stop right there." Aris paused, turning his head slightly. He assumed naturally that someone had dropped something or was calling out to a family member. He took another step. "I said stop." The voice was closer now, shrill and vibrating with indignation. "He's stealing my luggage. Someone stop him." Aris stopped. He turned fully around his brow, furrowing in confusion. Rushing toward him was a woman who looked like she had just stepped out of a catalogue for suburban chaos. She was wearing a pink velour tracksuit, clutching a glittery phone case, and her blonde hair was pulled back into a severe ponytail that seemed to pull her facial features into a permanent scowl. This was Brenda Miller, and Brenda was having a very bad day. She had missed her connection in Atlanta. Her seat had not reclinable. The coffee had been cold, and now she saw a man, a tall, broad-shouldered black man, walking away with what she decided was her property. "Excuse me," Aris said, his voice deep and calm, the voice he used to soothe patients before anesthesia took hold. Brenda didn't stop at a conversational distance. She marched right into his personal space, pointing a manicured finger at his chest. "You heard me," she snapped, looking around to ensure she had an audience. "Put the bag down." "Now?" Aris blinked, looking from her to the bag and back. "Madam, I think you're confused. This is my bag." "Don't you madam me," Brenda spat. "I know a thief when I see one. That is a designer bag. It's Italian leather. And you're just walking off with it like you own the place." Aris sighed a long, weary exhale. "I do not own the place, but I do own this bag. If you'll excuse me, my driver is waiting." He turned to leave. It was the wrong move. Brenda lunged, grabbing the handle of the bag. "Help police security! He's stealing my stuff! He's assaulting me!" The terminal froze. The ambient chatter died instantly. Hundreds of eyes pivoted toward Carousel 9. Aris froze his hand, tightening on the handle, not out of aggression, but to ensure she didn't yank the prototype sensor onto the hard tile floor. "Let go of the bag," he said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming colder. "No." Brenda screamed, tears instantly, miraculously springing to her eyes. "This is mine. My husband bought this for me in Milan. How dare you?" A young man in a hoodie nearby pulled out his phone. Then a woman in a business suit did the same. Within seconds, a ring of cameras surrounded them. The stage was set. Aris knew the statistics. He knew that as a black man in America, regardless of his tax bracket, his degrees, or the bespoke fit of his jacket, public confrontations were dangerous variables. He needed to de-escalate. "Mum," Aris said, keeping his hands visible and his posture non-threatening. "Please listen. My name is Dr. Aris Freeman. If you look at the tag on the handle, I don't care what lies you pasted on there," Brenda shouted, yanking harder. She was creating a spectacle feeding off the energy of the gathering crowd. "You probably switched the tags while I was in the bathroom. That's what you people do." The phrase hung in the air, heavy and toxic. "You people." Aris stiffened. "Excuse me." "You heard me," Brenda yelled. "Opportunists. You see something nice and you just take it. Step away from the lady." The command came from behind Aris. It was a bark, not a request. Aris didn't turn immediately. He moved slowly. Approaching them was a security officer. The nameplate on his uniform read, Paulton. He was a heavy-set man with a flushed face and a belt weighed down by a radio keys and a taser that he was currently resting his hand on. Gary Paulton had been working airport security for 20 years. He was tired, his feet hurt, and he had a very specific, narrow view of how the world worked. In his view, women in pink tracksuits were victims, and men who looked like Aris were perpetrators. "Officer, thank God!" Brenda cried out, releasing the bag to clasp her hands to her chest. "He tried to run off with my luggage, and when I tried to stop him, he grabbed me." It was a lie so blatant that Aris almost laughed. "Almost. That is categorically false," Aris said, facing the officer. "I never touched her. This is my luggage. I have the claim ticket right here in my—" "I didn't ask for your ticket," Officer Paulton interrupted, stepping into Aris's space. He turned his back slightly to Aris to address Brenda, a clear tactical sign of who he considered the threat. "Are you okay, Mum? I'm shaken," Brenda sobbed, wiping away a non-existent tear. It's a very expensive bag, my anniversary gift. I turned my back for 1 second." Paulton nodded, his jaw set. He turned back to Aris. "All right, buddy. Hand it over." "I am not your buddy," Aris said, his voice sharpening. "And I am not handing over my property based on the hysterics of a stranger. If you want to verify ownership, check the luggage tag. It has my name and my clinic's address." Poulton sneered. "I told you to hand it over. We can check the tags in the holding room. Right now you're causing a disturbance." "I am causing a disturbance?" Aris asked, incredulous. She screamed at me. "You're being aggressive," Poulton stated, his hand tightening on his taser, "and you're refusing a direct order from a security officer." "I am refusing to be bullied," Aris corrected. "Call the airport police. Call the TSA supervisor. I'm not dealing with private rent-a-cops who refuse to look at evidence." Poulton's face turned a darker shade of red. His authority was being challenged in front of an audience. The phones were recording. He felt the need to assert dominance. "So put the bag down and place your hands behind your back," Poulton ordered, unclipping his handcuffs. "For what?" Aris demanded. "Checking a bag." "Look at the bag, officer. It's monogrammed. It says AF right on the leather. Does this woman look like an AF to you?" Brenda gasped. "My husband's name is Anthony Franklin. That's why it says AF." It was such a clumsy lie improvised on the spot. "Anthony Franklin," Aris repeated dryly. "And you said earlier he bought it in Milan. Tell me, Ma'am, what is the interior lining made of?" Brenda stammered. It's silk. Red silk." Aris looked at Poulton. "It's grey suede. Open it. Verify it." "I said hands behind your back," Poulton shouted, losing his temper. He lunged forward, grabbing Aris's wrist. Aris was a surgeon. His hands were his livelihood. Instinctively, he pulled his arm back to protect his fingers. "He's resisting," Brenda shrieked. "He's hitting the officer." That was the trigger. Poulton didn't wait. He tackled Aris. It was sloppy, but gravity did the work. They crashed into the metal side of the carousel. Aris felt a sharp pain in his shoulder, his operating shoulder. A surge of cold, white-hot anger flooded his system. He didn't fight back physically. He knew that would be a death sentence. He went limp, allowing Poulton to wrestle him to the ground, pressing a knee into Aris's lower back. "Stop fighting!" Poulton yelled for the cameras, even though Aris was perfectly still. The cold metal of the handcuffs bit into Aris's wrists. Click, click. The crowd gasped. Some murmured in protest. He didn't do anything more, but most just kept recording. Poulton hauled Aris to his feet. Aris's suit was dusted with floor grime. His shoulder throbbed. He looked at Brenda, who was now clutching his bag, looking triumphant. "You're making a mistake," Aris said. His voice was no longer angry. It was something far worse. It was clinically detached. "A very expensive career-ending mistake." "Save it for the judge," Poulton spat. He began to march Aris toward the security office, away from the public eye. Brenda followed close behind, dragging the silver bag, looking like the queen of the terminal. As they walked, Aris leaned his head toward his left shoulder. "Siri," he said clearly to the earbud he hadn't removed. "Call Regina Holt. Priority red." Poulton laughed. "Calling your girlfriend. She can't help you now." Aris didn't answer. He just waited for the connection tone. "Regina," Aris said, when the line clicked open. "Aris." The voice on the other end was sharp alert. "Why do you sound like you're being manhandled? And why is my biometric alert telling me your heart rate just spiked to 130? "I'm at JFK Terminal 4, Aris said, staring dead ahead at the exit doors. "I have been falsely arrested by a private security contractor named Gary Poulton. A woman named Brenda Miller has stolen the prototype bag. They are taking me to a holding room." There was a silence on the line, a terrifying, pregnant silence. "Are you injured?" "My right shoulder. Subluxation suspected." "They hurt the hand." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Aris, did they hurt the hand?" "The hand is fine. The shoulder is compromised." "Okay," Regina said. "Don't say another word, not one word. Keep the line open." "Regina." Yes, Aris, burn it down. With pleasure. ETA 12 minutes. The line went dead. Polton shoved Aris through a service door. Shut up. No phones. He ripped the earbud out of Aris's ear and tossed it into a plastic bin. They pushed him into a small windowless room with a metal table and 3 chairs. Polton shoved him into a chair. Brenda stood by the door, hugging the bag, looking slightly less confident now that they were out of the public eye. "Can I go?" Brenda asked. "I have a connecting flight." "Just need a statement, Mum," Polton said, puffing his chest out. "Then you and your property can go." Aris sat in the chair, the handcuffs digging into his skin. He closed his eyes and began to count backward from 700. He needed to lower his heart rate. He needed to be the calmest person in the room when the storm arrived. 10 minutes passed. Polton was typing on a computer with 2 fingers, painfully slow. Brenda was scrolling on her phone, likely posting about her harrowing ordeal. Then the ground shook. It wasn't an earthquake. It was the sound of 3 black SUVs screeching to a halt at the curbside directly outside the service entrance, an area strictly forbidden to civilian vehicles. Polton looked up. "What the hell is that?" Doors slammed. Voices were raised outside, loud, authoritative voices that didn't ask for permission. The door to the holding room didn't just open. It was thrown open with enough force to dent the drywall. Polton jumped up, hand going to his taser. "Hey, this is a restricted art." He stopped. Standing in the doorway was a woman who looked like she had been carved out of marble and dressed by the devil himself. Regina Holt. She wore a crimson power suit that cost more than Polton's annual salary. Behind her stood 4 men in dark suits, carrying briefcases that looked like weapons. And behind them were 2 uniformed NYPD officers and the airport operations manager, who looked like he was about to vomit. Regina stepped into the room. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. She didn't look at Polton. She didn't look at Brenda. She looked solely at Aris. "Dr. Freeman," she said, her voice smooth as silk and hard as titanium. "Are we secure?" Aris looked up, a small, cold smile playing on his lips. "We are now." Regina turned to Polton. She didn't yell. She didn't scream. She simply adjusted her glasses and looked at him like he was a stain on the carpet. "My name is Regina Holt, Senior Partner at Highsmith, O'Connell & Stein. I represent Dr. Aris Freeman. You are currently unlawfully detaining the world's leading neurosurgeon. You have 5 seconds to unlock those cuffs, or I will personally ensure that your next job involves asking people if they want fries with that." 1. Polton froze. "Now look here, lady." 2. The operations manager rushed forward. Gary, for God's sake, uncuff him. That's Aris Freeman. He owns the patent for the scanner we use at Gate 7. Polton's face drained of color. He looked at the handcuffs. He looked at Aris. He looked at Brenda, who was now clutching the bag so hard her knuckles were white. He stole her bag," Polton stammered. Regina turned her gaze to Brenda. It was like a spotlight hitting a cockroach. "Did he?" Regina asked. She walked over to Brenda. Brenda shrank back against the wall. It's my bag," Brenda squeaked. "Is it?" Regina reached out. "May I?" "No," Brenda shouted. "Officer," Regina barked at one of the NYPD cops behind her. "Please secure the evidence." The NYPD officer stepped forward, gently taking the bag from a trembling Brenda. He placed it on the table. "Open it," Aris said softly from his chair. Regina unzipped the bag. The sound was like a thunderclap in the small room. She flipped the top open. There were no women's clothes inside. There was no makeup. There was a sleek metallic device with glowing blue LEDs, a stack of files labeled Confidential, Neurolink, and a tailored suit jacket with the name Freeman stitched into the lining. Regina reached into the side pocket and pulled out a passport. She held it up. "Dr. Aris Freeman," she read. She turned to Brenda. "Unless you have undergone a very convincing gender reassignment surgery and changed your race in the last hour, I believe you are in possession of stolen property." Brenda dropped her phone. Regina turned back to Poulton, her eyes narrowing. "Now, about those cuffs." The sound of the handcuffs unlocking was the loudest thing in the room. Gary Poulton's hands were shaking so badly it took him 3 tries to fit the small key into the mechanism. When the metal finally clicked open, Dr. Aris Freeman didn't rub his wrists immediately. He didn't give Poulton the satisfaction of showing pain. He simply rotated his right shoulder, a sickening pop echoing in the silence. Aris winced a micro-expression that vanished as quickly as it appeared, but Regina Holt saw it. Her eyes narrowed into slits of zero absolute frost. "Don't move the arm, Aris," she commanded softly. She turned to the airport operations manager, a sweating man named Mr. Henderson. "Get a medic, now. And I want an orthopedic specialist on standby at Mount Sinai. If there is nerve damage, Mr. Henderson, you are going to need a budget surplus the size of a small country to pay for it." Henderson nodded frantically, radioing for EMS. Meanwhile, Brenda Miller was edging toward the door. She had watched the bag reveal with the horror of a magician whose trick had just resulted in a decapitation. She saw the suits, Regina's legal team, unpacking laptops and setting up what looked like a war room on the dirty metal table. I think there's been a misunderstanding." Brenda stammered, her voice pitched high and breathy. She tried to slip past one of the NYPD officers, Sergeant Kowalski. "My bag must be on the carousel. It looks exactly like that one. It's an honest mistake. I'm just going to go check." "Sit down, Mrs. Miller," Regina said. She didn't shout. She didn't even look up from the file she was reading. It was the voice of a woman who commanded gravity. "You can't keep me here," Brenda shrilled, clutching her glittery phone case. "I'm an American citizen. This is kidnapping. I made a mistake. People make mistakes." Regina slowly closed the file. She walked around the table, her heels clicking on the linoleum like the ticking of a doomsday clock. She stopped inches from Brenda. "A mistake," Regina repeated, tasting the word. "Let's test that theory." Regina signaled to one of her associates, a sharp-jawed man named Carter. "Carter, go to Carousel 9. Find Mrs. Miller's actual luggage. She claims it is identical to Dr. Freeman's bespoke, one-of-a-kind, silver Cordovan weekender. On it," Carter said, disappearing out the door. "It is—" Brenda insisted, sweat beading on her upper lip. "It's silver. It's Italian. And you." Regina turned on Poulton, who was trying to blend into the drywall. "Officer Poulton, you stated in your radio dispatch, which we have already pulled by the way that the suspect was aggressive and resisting. Yet looking at the security feed from the carousel..." Regina pointed to a tablet one of her aides was holding up. The video played. It showed Aris standing still. It showed Brenda screaming. It showed Poulton tackling a man who had his hands open and empty. "I see an assault," Regina said calmly, "but not by Dr. Freeman." Poulton swallowed hard. He was non-compliant. He refused to show ID. "He told you to check the bag tag," Regina corrected. "A procedure that would have taken 3 seconds and prevented a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. Why didn't you check the tag, Gary? I thought..." "You thought what?" Regina stepped closer. "You thought the black man in the expensive suit couldn't possibly own the expensive bag. Was that the thought process?" "I'm not a racist," Poulton shouted, his face blotchy. "I was doing my job. You were doing a job," Regina said. "Badly. And for the last time." The door opened. Carter returned. He was dragging a suitcase. It was not silver. It was not leather. It was a bright neon pink hard-shell suitcase with a cracked wheel and a sticker that said "Live, Laugh, Love" on the side. The room fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. Regina looked at the pink bag. Then she looked at the silver masterpiece on the table. Then she looked at Brenda. Identical. Regina deadpanned. I can see the confusion. They are practically twins. Brenda's face went from pale to a deep, embarrassed crimson. I have a silver one at home. I must have grabbed the wrong one from the closet. I'm under a lot of stress. You said your husband bought it in Milan. Aris spoke up. He was sitting on the edge of the table, holding his right arm carefully. His voice was low, laced with pain. You said it was an anniversary gift. You invented a history for an object you had never seen before today. That is not a mistake, madam. That is predation. I was scared, Brenda yelled, pivoting to victimhood. You were looming over me. I was walking away, Aris said. This is ridiculous. Brenda scoffed, waving her hand. Fine, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Happy. Now let me go. I'm missing my flight. Regina laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Mrs. Miller, you seem to labor under the delusion that this is a customer service dispute. You think you can speak to the manager and leave? Regina leaned in her voice, dropping to a whisper that carried more threat than a scream. You falsely accused a man of grand larceny. You incited a panic. You filed a false police report, and you conspired to detain a neurosurgeon, causing potential nerve damage to the hands that save lives. Regina checked her watch. You aren't making your flight, Brenda. You're going to be booked, Sergeant Kowalski. The NYPD sergeant stepped forward. He had been watching the exchange with a growing look of disgust toward Paulton and Brenda. He unclipped his own handcuffs, real police issue. Brenda Miller, Kowalski said, stand up and place your hands behind your back. What no? Brenda shrieked, backing into the corner. You can't arrest me. I'm the victim. He stole... Well, he looked like he was stealing. You are under arrest for filing a false report, disorderly conduct, and attempted larceny, Kowalski recited. As the cuffs clicked onto Brenda's wrists, she looked at Aris. Her eyes were wide, pleading. Sir, please tell them to stop. It was just a misunderstanding. I have kids. Aris looked at her. He looked at the pink bag. He looked at his own shaking hand. My patients have kids too, Mrs. Miller, Aris said softly. And because of your misunderstanding, I might not be able to operate on them next week. Brenda began to wail as she was led out of the room, her pink tracksuit disappearing into the hallway. But Regina wasn't done. She turned back to Paulton and Mr. Henderson. Now, she said, cracking her knuckles. Let's talk about the airport authority. While Aris was being tended to by the paramedics in the corner of the office, his shoulder taped his arm in a sling, Regina's team went to work on the hard karma. Justice in a courtroom takes years. Justice in the court of public opinion takes minutes. Carter, what do we have on Brenda Miller? Regina asked. Carter was typing furiously on a laptop. It's not good. For her, she's not just a confused traveler. She's a lifestyle coach with a moderate following on Instagram. Handle is Brenda Be Real. Lifestyle coach, Regina mused. Irony is dead. And here's the kicker, Carter continued. She was live streaming. Aris looked up. She was what? She started a broadcast on her subscriber-only channel about 3 minutes before you took the bag, Carter explained. She was narrating her travel woes. We just scrubbed the cloud cache. She didn't delete it fast enough. Play it, Regina ordered. Carter cast the video to the wall monitor. On screen, Brenda's face appeared close up, filtered to smooth out her skin. She was whispering to the phone. Guys, you won't believe this airport. It's a zoo. And look at this. The camera panned around. It zoomed in on the luggage carousel. It zoomed in specifically on the silver cordovan bag as it came down the chute. "Ooh, look at that," Brenda's voiceover said. "That is gorgeous. Silver leather. No tag visible from here. Probably abandoned. Or—" The camera panned to Oris, who was standing 10 feet away checking his phone. "Or maybe that guy thinks he's going to take it. Look at him. He doesn't look like he owns a bag like that, does he? He looks like a rapper or something." Harris watched the screen, his face stoic. Polton, still sitting in the chair, awaiting his own disciplinary hearing, looked at the floor. The video continued. Brenda whispered, "Watch this. I'm going to teach him a lesson. Content gold, guys. Stay tuned." Then she put the phone in her pocket, but the audio kept recording. The audio captured her scream. "Hey, you stop right there." Regina paused the video. The room was silent. "Premeditated," Regina said. "She saw the bag, decided she wanted it. Saw you decided you were an easy target, and staged the confrontation for content." "She profiled him for clicks," Mr. Henderson murmured, looking pale. "Jesus." "Mr. Henderson," Regina said, turning to the operations manager, "that video is going to be Exhibit A, but it's also going to be on the 6 o'clock news. Unless what?" Henderson asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Unless the airport authority wants to avoid a negligence suit that will bankrupt this terminal," Regina said. "We want full cooperation. We want Polton's employment records. We want the maintenance logs for the cameras. And we want an official public apology issued within the hour." "Done," Henderson said immediately. "And Gary." Henderson looked at Polton. "You're fired, Gary. Hand in your badge. And you're lucky if we don't press charges ourselves for liability." Polton slumped. "But my pension—" "You should have thought about your pension before you tackled a surgeon," Regina said. But the twists weren't over. Aris's phone buzzed. He picked it up with his left hand. It was a notification from the hospital. "Urgent patient 404. Senator Holbrook cranial pressure rising. Emergency craniectomy needed. Dr. Weiss is prepping, but the family is demanding you." Aris looked at Regina. "I have to go. Holbrook is dying." "You can't operate, Aris," Regina said, looking at his sling. "Your shoulder." "I can supervise," Aris said, standing up. The pain made him sway, but he steadied himself. "I can guide Weiss, but I need to get there. The traffic is gridlock." Regina looked at Henderson. "You heard the man. He needs to get to St. Jude's. Now. And he can't sit in traffic." Henderson's eyes widened. We have a chopper on the tarmac, usually for executive transport." "Get it ready," Regina ordered, "and get my client his bag." The scene shifted from the claustrophobic interrogation room to the windswept tarmac of JFK. The sun was setting, casting long orange shadows across the concrete. A sleek Sikorsky helicopter was spinning up its rotors, the noise deafening. Aris walked toward it, clutching his silver bag in his good hand, his suit jacket flapping in the wind. Regina walked beside him. "You're going to be okay," she shouted over the rotor wash. "I'll live," Aris shouted back. "Holbrook might not. We're not done with Brenda or Polton," Regina promised. "By the time you land, Brenda will be famous. Infamous. I'm leaking the video." Aris paused at the steps of the helicopter. He looked back at the terminal building. Somewhere in there, Brenda was being fingerprinted. Polton was cleaning out his locker. "Don't just leak it," Aris said, his voice cold. "Tag her sponsors." Regina smiled, a shark, sensing blood in the water. "Consider it done." Aris climbed into the chopper. As it lifted off, rising above the chaos of the airport, he looked down. He saw the police cars. He saw the traffic. But the story wasn't over. Because as the helicopter banked toward the city, Aris's phone buzzed again. An unknown number. He answered it. Dr. Freeman. A distorted voice. Who is this? You don't know me, but I saw what happened at the airport. I work in the server room for the security company. Okay, Aris said, wary. You need to know something. Paulton wasn't just acting on bias. I checked his text messages on the company server. 10 minutes before you landed, he got a text. Aris gripped the phone tighter. A text from who? It was a burner number. The text said, Target landing carousel 9. Silver bag. Make a scene. Delay him. This wasn't just a random Karen incident, Doctor. Someone paid Brenda to start it, and someone paid Paulton to finish it. The helicopter soared over the Brooklyn Bridge, but Aris felt a chill that had nothing to do with the altitude. It wasn't just racism. It wasn't just bad luck. It was a hit. Someone wanted to stop him from getting to Senator Holbrook. Who knew I was on that flight? Aris asked the air. He looked at the silver bag on the seat next to him, the prototype sensor inside, the sensor that could revolutionize neurology or destroy a billion-dollar pharmaceutical industry. The game had just changed. Brenda was just a pawn. Paulton was a hired thug. The real enemy was still out there. And Aris was flying right into their city. The Sikorsky helicopter touched down on the roof of St. Jude's Research Hospital. With a heavy thud, the rotors whipping the white coats of the waiting medical team into a frenzy. Dr. Aris Freeman didn't wait for the blades to stop. He unbuckled his harness with his left hand, clutching the silver bag to his chest like a shield. The pain in his right shoulder was a dull, throbbing roar, now a constant reminder of the concrete floor at JFK. Dr. Freeman. A young resident, Dr. Levi Cohen, rushed forward, ducking under the rotors. We have Senator Holbrook in OR3. Dr. Weiss has opened the cranium, but the swelling is massive. We can't identify the bleed source. Status of the vitals, Aris barked, running toward the roof access door flanked by 2 hospital security guards. BP is 180/110. Heart rate erratic. We're losing him, Doctor. If we don't decompress in 10 minutes, he's brain dead. Aris burst through the doors, the sterile air of the hospital hitting him. He moved with a speed that defied his injury. Get me a headset. I can't scrub in. My shoulder is out. You're not operating, Cohen asked, pale. I'm directing, Aris said, and I have the map. He slammed the silver bag onto a gurney as they ran down the hallway. He unzipped it with his good hand, bypassing the clothes and files, and pulled out the metallic device with the blue LEDs, the Neurolink prototype X1. Get this sterilized and into the theater now, Aris ordered, shoving the device at a nurse. It connects to the intraoperative MRI. It sees things standard imaging misses. They reached the scrub room. Aris didn't stop to wash. He stood at the glass observation window overlooking Operating Room 3. He slipped on a headset. Dr. Weiss, Aris's voice boomed into the earpieces of the surgical team inside. Report. Inside the OR, Doctor. Weiss, a capable but nervous surgeon, looked up at the glass. Aris, thank God. We're flying blind. The tissue is inflamed. I can't see the aneurysm. It's not an aneurysm, Aris said, his eyes scanning the monitors relaying the patient's vitals. He thought back to the mysterious phone call in the helicopter. The delay was a hit. Why delay a doctor to let a patient die? But why would Senator Holbrook's death require such an elaborate setup unless the cause of death needed to be hidden? Connect the X1, Aris commanded. The nurse ran in with the sterilized prototype. They plugged it into the main console. On the large overhead monitor, the grainy gray image of the senator's brain was suddenly overlaid with a crisp neon blue topographical map. The X1 sensor used quantum imaging to detect blood flow at a cellular level. There, Aris pointed with his left hand, though no one inside could see him. Weiss, look at the temporal lobe. Sector 4. Weiss squinted at the screen. I see, Shadowing. Is that a clot? No. Aris whispered, a cold realization washing over him. The heat signature was wrong. It wasn't red like blood. It was green. That's a chemical agent. The room went silent. Chemical, Weiss asked. You mean poison? Succinicoline derivative. Aris diagnosed instantly. Someone dosed him. It mimics a stroke, but the X1 picks up the metabolic waste of the toxin. If I hadn't brought this bag, you would have treated it as a stroke, clipped an artery, and he would have bled out on the table. It would have looked like a surgical error. The delay at the airport. The stolen bag. It was all designed to keep the X1 sensor away from the hospital. If Aris had been stuck in a holding cell for just 1 more hour, Holbrook would be dead, and the poison would have been undetectable by standard autopsy. Weiss Aris said, his voice steel. Change protocol. Flush the area with saline and administer dantrolene immediately. Do not clip the artery. Copy that, Weiss said, his hands moving fast. Aris watched his heart hammering against his ribs. The monitors beeped a chaotic, terrifying rhythm. Then, as the antidote hit the senator's system, the lines smoothed out. The pressure dropped. BP normalizing, the anesthesiologist called out. 140/90. He's stabilizing. Aris slumped against the glass wall, sweat dripping down his forehead. He had saved the senator, but more importantly, he had preserved the evidence. He looked at the silver bag sitting on the floor next to him. It wasn't just luggage. It was the smoking gun in an assassination attempt. His phone buzzed. It was Regina. Tell me you're alive, she said. I'm alive, and Holbrook is alive, Aris said. Regina, this just went from a civil rights lawsuit to a federal treason case. They tried to murder a U.S. senator using a neurotoxin. The airport stunt was to stop me from diagnosing it. There was a pause on the line. Then Regina let out a low, dangerous laugh. Well then, she said, it's a good thing I just decided to go nuclear on Brenda. Because if we're dealing with assassins, we need to flush out the rats, and Brenda is about to squeal. While Aris was saving a life in Manhattan, Brenda Miller was watching hers end in a holding cell in Queens. She had been stripped of her pink tracksuit and given an orange jumpsuit that smelled of industrial detergent. Her shoelaces had been taken. Her jewelry was in a plastic bag. But the worst part was the silence. They had taken her phone. Brenda lived on her phone. She existed for the dopamine hits of likes and comments. Without it, she felt like she was fading out of existence. The door to the holding cell buzzed open. A guard stepped in. Lawyer's here. Brenda scrambled up. Oh, thank God, Anthony sent a lawyer. A man in a sharp blue suit walked in. He didn't look like the kind of lawyer Anthony, a mid-level manager at a car dealership, could afford. This man looked like a shark in human skin. I am not your lawyer, Mrs. Miller, the man said, sitting down at the metal table and opening a laptop. My name is Carter. I work for Dr. Freeman. Brenda backed away. I don't want to talk to you. You really do, Carter said, spinning the laptop around so she could see the screen. Because right now, you are the most hated woman in America, and I'm the only one who can offer you a lifeboat. Brenda looked at the screen. It was Twitter X. The trending topics were 1. Luggage Karen. Justice for Dr. Freeman. Brenda Miller Heiss over 4. Airport setup. Carter clicked on a video. It was Regina Holt standing on the steps of the police precinct, surrounded by microphones. Today we saw the ugly face of bias, Regina was saying to the cameras. But we also saw something more sinister. We have evidence that Brenda Miller did not act alone. We have evidence that she was paid to stage a hate crime to conceal a corporate crime. Carter paused the video. He clicked to Instagram. Brenda's account, or Brenda Be Real, was hemorrhaging followers. She had lost 40,000 in an hour. The comments were a landslide of vitriol. You set him up. Hope you like jail. Liar. I want my money back for your coaching course. Then Carter opened an email inbox. These are from your sponsors, he narrated. Fitty dropped you. Fab Fashion terminated your contract. And here is an email from the PTA board at your son's school. They are asking you to step down as treasurer effective immediately. Brenda sank onto the bench, tears streaming down her face. This wasn't fake crying anymore. This was the destruction of her carefully curated suburban identity. My husband, she sobbed. What about Anthony? Carter slid a piece of paper across the table. He called our office. He wants us to know he had no part in this. He's filing for separation. Apparently the Milan story you told at the airport. Well, Anthony has never been to Milan. He didn't appreciate the lie. Brenda put her head in her hands. I didn't know, she wailed. I didn't know it was going to be like this. I just needed the money. The room went dead silent. Carter leaned forward. His voice dropped to a whisper. The money. That's what we need to talk about, Brenda. He pulled out a screenshot. It was a bank transfer. $5,000 deposited into Brenda's account 2 days ago. The sender was an LLC called Obsidian Solutions. Who paid you? Brenda, Carter asked. Was it Obsidian? I don't know who they are, Brenda cried. A man called me. He said he saw my blog. He said he'd pay me $5,000 if I went to the airport and caused a scene with a specific passenger. He sent me a photo of the doctor. He said it was a prank show. He said it was for a YouTube channel called Social Experiment. I thought I was going to be on TV. A prank show, Carter repeated, unimpressed. And the text messages, the coordination with Officer Paulton. I didn't know Paulton. Brenda insisted. The man on the phone told me, don't worry about security. We have a guy on the inside. He told me to look for Paulton. What was the man's name? He said his name was Mr. Smith. I didn't ask questions. It was $5,000. We have credit card debt. Carter closed the laptop. You were used, Brenda. You were a cheap distraction to help assassinate a U.S. senator. Brenda stopped crying. She stared at Carter, her mouth hanging open. Assassinate? What? Dr. Freeman wasn't carrying clothes. He was carrying a medical device needed to save a senator's life. Because you delayed him, that senator almost died. That makes you an accessory to attempted political assassination. That's not county jail, Brenda. That's Guantanamo Bay territory. Brenda began to hyperventilate. Breathe, Carter ordered. There is a way out. You turn state's evidence. You give us the phone number that called you. You give us the bank records. You testify against Obsidian Solutions and whoever is behind them. You do that, and maybe Regina Holt convinces the district attorney to lower your charge to disorderly conduct. Brenda nodded frantically. I'll do it. I'll do anything. Please. Carter stood up. Smart choice, because the man who paid you, he's not going to be happy you failed. You're safer in here than you are out there. He knocked on the door to be let out. As Carter walked down the hallway of the police station, he dialed Regina. I got her, Carter said. She cracked. It was a prank show set up, paid by Obsidian Solutions. Obsidian Solutions, Regina said on the other end. I just ran Paulton's financials. He got $10,000 from the same shell company. Who owns Obsidian? Carter asked. It's a subsidiary, Regina said, her voice tight, buried under 3 layers of offshore accounts. But I have a friend in the Cayman Islands who owes me a favor. I just pulled the beneficial owner registry. And it leads back to a company called Ethelgard Biopharma. Carter stopped walking. Ethelgard. They're Dr. Freeman's biggest competitor. They make the chemotherapy drugs that Freeman's nanobots are rendering obsolete. Exactly, Regina said. They didn't just want to kill the senator. They wanted to kill the technology that would put them out of business. Dr. Freeman is coming into the office now. Meet us there. We're going to draft a RICO lawsuit that will make the history books. 3 days later, the boardroom of Ethelgard Biopharma was a fortress of glass and steel overlooking the Hudson River. The mood inside, however, was far from invincible. Preston Gould, the CEO of Ethelgard, stood by the window swirling a glass of scotch. He was a man who looked like he had been manufactured, not born perfect teeth, perfect tan, and a soul completely void of empathy. The senator survived, Gould said, not turning around. And Freeman made it to the hospital, explained to me how a simple delay tactic failed so spectacularly. His head of security, a former mercenary named Krennic, shifted uncomfortably. The woman Brenda Miller, she was supposed to hold him for at least 3 hours. But Freeman's legal team, they're monsters, sir. They didn't just bail him out, they dismantled the entire precinct. And now Miller is in custody. She's talking. Gould took a sip of scotch. Let her talk. She knows a voice on a phone and a shell company. Obsidian Solutions doesn't exist on paper anymore. I dissolved it this morning. There's no link to us. Sir, Krennic said, checking his tablet. There's a problem. The lobby security says Doctor. Freeman is here. Gould laughed. Here in my building, the arrogance. He's probably here to serve a civil suit for emotional distress. Let him up. I want to see the face of a man who thinks he can touch $1 billion empire. Gould sat at the head of the massive mahogany table. He signaled his executive team to remain seated. He wanted an audience for this humiliation. The double doors swung open. Dr. Aris Freeman walked in. He was wearing a fresh suit, his right arm still in a sling, but his posture was upright, king-like. He wasn't carrying the silver bag this time. He was followed by Regina Holt, and behind her Carter, and behind him 2 men in windbreakers that simply said FBI in bold yellow letters. Gould's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then returned. Dr. Freeman, to what do I owe the pleasure? If you're looking for an apology for your airport troubles, you're in the wrong building. I'm not looking for an apology, Preston, Aris said, his voice echoing in the silent room. I'm looking for the cure. The cure? Gould raised an eyebrow. Regina stepped forward, dropping a thick file onto the mahogany table. It landed with a heavy thud. Your flagship drug, Chemovax, generates $4 billion a year. Regina began pacing the room like a predator. But Dr. Freeman's Neuralink nanobots make it obsolete. They cure glioblastomas in weeks without side effects for a fraction of the cost. Competition is the heart of capitalism, Gould shrugged. May the best product win. But you didn't want to compete, Regina continued. You wanted to eliminate. We know about the poison, Preston. Succinicoline derivative. Traceable only by the X1 sensor, the very sensor you tried to confiscate at JFK. Gould chuckled. Wild accusations. You have the ravings of a suburban housewife and a disgraced security guard. You have nothing. We have the money, Carter spoke up from the back. Gould froze. You dissolved Obsidian Solutions this morning, Carter said, opening his laptop. Amateur move. You can't delete a blockchain ledger. You paid Brenda Miller and Gary Paulton in crypto, routed through the Cayman Islands. But you cashed out the initial buy-in from your personal corporate expense account. Consulting fees, you called it. Carter pressed a key. The boardroom's main screen hijacked. It displayed a flow chart of money, from Ethelgard to Obsidian to Brenda to Paulton. That's circumstantial. Gould snapped, standing up. Get out of my office. Sit down, the lead FBI agent barked. He stepped into the light. "Preston Gould, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit capital murder, domestic terrorism, and wire fraud." "Terrorism?" Gould sputtered. "Are you insane? Using a biological agent to assassinate a sitting U.S. senator to protect stock prices classifies as an act of terror," the agent said, pulling out handcuffs. As the agents moved in, Aris walked up to Gould. He looked the CEO in the eye. "You tried to take my bag," Aris said softly. "You tried to take my dignity. You tried to take a patient's life. You forgot one variable, Preston." "What's that?" Gould hissed as the cuffs locked around his wrists. "I'm a neurosurgeon." Aris smiled coldly. "I specialize in removing tumors. And you? You are malignant." The fall of Ethelgard Biopharma was swift and brutal. When the news broke that the CEO had attempted to assassinate Senator Holbrook, the stock didn't just dip, it evaporated. Trading was halted within minutes, but not before billions in value were wiped out. The board of directors was dissolved. The assets were seized by the DOJ. Gary Paulton took a plea deal. He avoided federal prison, but served 2 years in a state penitentiary for assault and filing false reports. He lost his pension. He lost his house. The last anyone heard, he was working under the table as a bouncer at a dive bar in New Jersey, where he was frequently recognized and mocked as the airport tackler. Brenda Miller got the fame she desperately wanted, but not the kind she expected. She testified against Gould and avoided jail time, receiving 5 years of probation. But the internet never forgets. She was banned from Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for violating community guidelines on criminal activity. Her name became a verb. Doing a Brenda meant ruining your own life for clout. She lost her home in the divorce. She moved back in with her mother. She found a job working the drive-thru at a taco chain. Every day people would drive up, film her, and ask, "Is that my taco, or are you going to accuse me of stealing it?" Preston Gould was denied bail. He is currently awaiting trial in a maximum security federal facility. The senator he tried to kill, Senator Holbrook, is expected to testify. Gould faces 3 consecutive life sentences. As for Dr. Aris Freeman, a week after the arrest, Aris stood at a podium at St. Jude's. His arm was still in a sling. The flash of cameras was blinding, but this time they weren't recording a crime. They were recording history. The FDA has fast-tracked the approval of the Neuralink X1 sensor and the nanobot delivery system, Aris announced to the cheering crowd. Starting next month, the treatment that saved Senator Holbrook will be available to everyone. Cancer doesn't care about your bank account, and neither do I. In the back of the room, Regina Holt leaned against the wall, checking her watch. She smiled. "Good work, Doctor," she whispered. Aris caught her eye and nodded. He picked up his bag, the silver Cordovan Weekender, and walked off the stage. He had a flight to catch. And this time he had a private jet. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why you never judge a book by its cover. And you certainly never ever judge a man by his luggage. Dr. Aris Freeman didn't just defeat a Karen at the airport. He dismantled $1 billion criminal empire and saved a life, all because he refused to be bullied. It's a powerful reminder. True power isn't about being the loudest person in the room. It's about being the smartest. And sometimes karma doesn't just knock on your door, it kicks it down with a federal warrant. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Dr. Freeman's shoes at that carousel? Thanks for watching. And remember, be kind, or be careful who you cross.